Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much indeed for spending your time with me this evening. My name is Nick Dashwood-Brown. I'm Head of Investor Relations at Anexo Group. For those of you who are not familiar with Anexo, we floated in the middle of 2018 at £1 with a valuation of 110 million. The share price has been up as high as £2. The last price I saw before I came into these meetings was 122. What does Anexo do? Anexo is an integrated credit hire and legal services group which acts for the non-fault motorist. We provide replacement vehicles for the non-fault motorist, and then our in-house litigators recover the hire and repair charges from the at-fault motorists' insurers. Now, we concentrate on impecunious claimants, and just to be very, very clear about it, an impecunious person, as you probably know, is somebody who hasn't got any money. Not only do they not have access to money, but more importantly, they don't have access to credit with which to provide a replacement vehicle for themselves. So they are in no position to provide a vehicle, and without us, they would effectively be on the bus. The case law behind this, there's no statute on this, but there is a multitude of case law, including Supreme Court rulings, which say that the impecunious claimant has a legal right to recover these costs because they should not be inconvenienced in a way that is not their fault because of the fact they've been involved in an accident. Now, we are very keen on cash generation. You'll notice on the right-hand side of the screen that we have achieved net cash generation throughout the first half of this year. And for the first half of 2020, turnover was 36.6 million and profit before tax of 6.7. So I'm doing this manually. So we have two parts of the business. Number one is the credit hire division, which is Edge, established in 1996. And this is the business that provides the cars. We have three business units: DAMS, which is car and light commercial vehicles; McCAMS, motorcycles, and we have a small business providing bicycles. Now, the key routes to this is a direct capture business. We are not involving the insurance company of the people involved in the accident. The key route to the market is via local body shops and repairers. We have a network of about 1,150 introducer garages. It's what my chairman calls Fred in a shed. It's two guys under the arches with a couple of car lifts who I'm sure I've got one. I'm sure most of you have one. And these are the people that our customers go to for reasons which I'll come to in just a moment. Once we have hired out the vehicle, and we try and do that within 24 hours, then the claim passes to our legal services division, Bond Turner, which looks after the recovery of the hire charges and the repair costs from the at-fault insurer, or for the write-off cost of the vehicle in the form of a check. We also look after personal injury as and where it is appropriate. Bond Turner acts exclusively on all the claims generated by Edge, and we have a full advocacy division led by my chairman, Alan Sellers. I want to point out that we also are involved in other types of advocacy, including professional and clinical negligence, and I will come later to our involvement in the VW emissions case. So just to be clear on what our customers do, there are two different insurance processes here. I'm sure that you and I are used to the fact that if we're involved in an accident, then we give both sides exchange the insurance details, and the insurer takes care of it all. Now, under normal circumstances, your insurer will perhaps offer you a hire car. It may do it maybe for a limited period, and it certainly probably won't be the car that you were driving. It may be something completely different. The car will need to be returned at some stage, and quite often that is before the repair is completed, or before the write-off settlement is agreed. And potentially, when you come to renew your insurance, you'll find that there's an impact on your no claims bonus and also an excess payable. Now, with an Anexo claimant, our customers don't tend to like going to their insurance company, and there are three main reasons for this. Because they are impecunious, they want to keep their insurance costs as low as possible in order to make themselves road legal. That means generally that they are third-party fire and theft, that they don't tick the box for no claims bonus protection, they certainly don't tick the box for replacement vehicles, and also that they will have as high an excess as they possibly can. So the higher the excess, the lower your monthly premium. So ultimately, they want to be road legal for as little as possible. So therefore, they have nowhere else to go. What tends to happen is they take the car to the garage and say, look, I've had a knock with this. What do you think it'll cost to get it sorted out? Because for most of them, if they're not working, they're not getting paid and they need a vehicle to work. So if it's one of our introducer garages, and they will say to them, that's absolutely fine, why don't you call direct accident, and they'll look after it for you. Now, as the vehicle is assessed, it's either assessed for repair or for write-off by an independent court-appointed engineer. So there's never an argument with the other side's insurance company as to what the status of the repair or the write-off is. And it means that there is no upfront cost to the claimant, nor loss of no claims bonus, and they have their hire car for the full length of the repair or for the receipt of the write-off value from the insurer, which can take some considerable time. So just to put it in diagrammatic form, this is our direct capture sources through body shops, vehicle workshops, and recovery agents. We have a team of 22 sales, actually it's just gone up to 24 salespeople who cover the majority of the country, not all of it, to make sure that the garages are aware of the services that we offer. We then process the claim through Edge and through Bond Turner, and ultimately we end up with either a court judgment or a settlement. So what are our differentiators? The differentiators are firstly direct capture, as I've said before. Secondly, the impecunious market, cars, motorbikes and cycles. About 70% of our business at the moment is motorbikes, particularly couriers, anything in the sort of 125cc and below. There are a lot of them. It's a growing market. As you can probably imagine, they have a lot of accidents. The integrated approach we found much more efficient, which is why we folded in the legal services team. And this is fairly unique to us. I think Alan Sellers has been doing this since the mid-90s. We have a very effective screening and in-house database. So where litigation commenced, which is very, very rarely, we have less than a 2% failure rate, and over 98% of our cases settle before court. So that's what we do. Here's how well we do it. These are our most recent numbers, which are the interims ended 30th of June. Now, what I want you to look at there is the cash collection, which as you can see is up 30%. And that's really what we've been focusing on. The more settlements we have, the more cash we bring in, and that enables us to put more vehicles on the road. Now, the headline figure in terms of operating profit and profit before tax doesn't look great in these particular figures. And you'll notice from the notes there, the reason for that is we put a huge amount of investment in staff in our legal business to drive settlements and cash receipts through the second half of 2020 and into 2021. And I'll have some staff figures for you later. We've also invested heavily in the VW case. I'll come to that later as well. And we've got office and IT associated with the headcount increase, which has accounted for £500,000 of expenditure. We have a main office in Liverpool. We opened an office at the end of 2018 in Bolton, which was 10,000 square feet. We've now doubled that to 20,000 square feet. And as I'll mention later on, we're in the process of opening an office in Leeds. We do pay a dividend. I think we're an unusual name for doing that. We paid a halfpenny per share. So the operational highlights for the 6 months, we were net cash generative throughout the period. This is something that obviously the city's been very keen on since we floated. We're anxious to stop absorbing cash and to start generating it. And with the way we have managed that is through the strategy of keeping the number of vehicles we put on the road at a standard, at a steady level, while increasing the number of litigators within our workforce to increase the number of settlements we make and therefore the amount of cash that brings in. We've been looking to strengthen our balance sheet, and we did a successful placing in May 2020 to raise 7 million. That was the 29th of May, I seem to remember. That was at £1.25. We've also raised an additional 2.1 million from a litigation funder for VW emissions case. As I say, I'll come to that in a wee bit. And we've got a further capital base with 5 million C-bills, which came through in July. Now, obviously, we were affected by COVID, and I've got a slide on that in a wee bit. The number of vehicles did go down in March and April, but now we are back to ahead of internal targets. As at the end of August, it was at 1,575, and certainly I got some figures today towards the end of September, and we're in excess of that now. Similarly, we saw a small decrease in cash receipts and fee income and legal services because it was harder to settle cases because the other side, the representatives of the other side were not necessarily in their offices. That also has returned very much to normal. So we are expecting a return to previous efficiencies and increases in settlements and cash collections in the second half of this year. So a few KPIs for you to give you an idea of how that works. We look at vehicles on hire at the period end and vehicles on hire over an average period. You'll see both of those have gone down, and that's really a function of the fact that there were less vehicles on the road. Similarly, completed vehicle hires have gone down. However, higher cases settled have gone up, and that's a reflection on the new staff that we've got, who've increased our ability to settle cases in an efficient and timely manner. And cash collections, which is the crucial thing, up 30%. And you'll see that reflects the number of legal staff we've got, 30% increase in overall legal staff, 25% increase in senior fee earners. And looking at the number of new cases funded, that's, from our perspective, that's down 10%, which is broadly flat. One point I'd like to make on that is that on average, we put about 6,000 vehicles a year on the road. We get about 12,000 opportunities, and it's a reflection of the efficiency of our vetting procedure that we basically turn down 50% of the cases which were offered because perhaps they're not suitable for our model. It's also worth bearing in mind that the Department of Transport suggests that there's around about 300,000 road traffic accidents, no fault road traffic accidents per year. So we are at best 2% of the market. It's a huge growth area. So just a quick word on COVID. We were very lucky with this in the sense that we never closed. COVID, car rental is an essential business under government guidelines, so we remained fully operational throughout with that. We did see vehicles fall off, obviously, because there were fewer things for them to run into. Normally we would put about 150 vehicles on the road a week. I think in the middle of, or towards the end of March, the first week in lockdown, I think that number was 45. So it came right down. Having said that, we've seen a massive rebound in it. And as I say, our vehicle levels are at historic high levels. That's partly because a lot of our customers who are impecunious are key workers. A lot of them are couriers, they're supermarket workers, they're NHS, and so they've remained on the road. We've also seen a lengthening of hire periods because a lot of the vehicles we've got in for repair are up on a ramp, they're waiting for spare parts or whatever, or the garage is closed. But overall, Edge has remained fully open, and the courts have also remained open for proceedings. Hearings have gone through via telephone or Skype, and actually it's worked very efficiently. For civil cases, physical presence is not necessary. It's obviously a different story for criminal cases. We put most of our staff working from home. We haven't furloughed anybody during this period, and the majority of our staff are now back to office working. I was up in the Liverpool office last week. Everybody's got their plastic screens up. It's working extremely well. Similarly, on the defendant solicitor side and the insurance company side, our counterparties have done the same thing. And ultimately, we have a case backlog of some 19 to 20,000 files, which means that our business model remains very resilient. And it's worth bearing in mind, if we never put another vehicle on the road, we have a backlog of 3 years worth of work to get through in terms of settlement. So a little bit more detail on the credit hire side. As I say, the completed hires went down 22.7% and revenues went down in the same proportion. But looking at the bottom, you'll see total vehicles on the road increasing again, just over 1,500. And looking at it now, we're certainly ahead of our own expectations post-COVID in terms of the number of vehicles on the road and the market share, particularly high in terms of McCanns. That's couriers, that's people getting parcels, food, whatever it may happen to be delivered. These guys are particularly busy. And I wanted to mention CAMS, which is the bicycle accident management business. We have a slightly different model there, which is that obviously we don't repair bikes, we'll just give you a new one. And that's a small part of our business at the moment, but it's just interesting because clearly cycling is going to be a growth area. Legal services, revenues increased to 15.9 million, cash collections increased by 11.3 million. And this is a function of continuing to hire senior fee earners and get them up and running. When we take people on, we believe it takes between 6 and 9 months for them to get to full capacity. What we do is we'll give them a selection of files. There'll be some new files for them. There'll be some old ones which are problematic, and there'll be some ones which are near to completion because obviously that's part of their incentivization. But it means it's having a direct effect on our cash collections. It's very straightforward. More people employed equals more settlements equals more cash in. And we are, as I said earlier, planning for a Leeds office to open in 2020. Later on this year. It'll be a small office to start with. I would have thought half a dozen people, but there's potential for growth there. Now, you may have seen a certain amount in the press about the VW emissions case. For those of you who are not aware of it, just to be aware, we are engaged in the class action through Bond Turner, and we have over 10,700 actively engaged cases at the moment. We're involved in a social media campaign and also using group records because obviously we have another number of customers who've historically come to us with accidents to their VW. The background to this, the High Court ruling says that VW has subverted key pollution tests, and they were refused leave to appeal last month. So there really isn't anywhere else for them to go. They already admitted liability and settled in the US, Germany, Australia, and Brazil. Now, ultimately, there's no guarantee of a settlement. And ultimately, I don't want to give any figures on it, but in theory, we would get a proportion of damages awarded to the claimant, plus we are able to reclaim legal fees. All our legal costs are expensed as incurred through the P&L. So there is a potential considerable windfall available upon settlement. We believe that this will settle at some stage during 2021. VW aren't the only people who've been engaged in the emissions problems. Mercedes are in the same boat, and we're currently in the process of preparing the documentation for a claim against Mercedes. And there are other manufacturers also in, I wouldn't say in our sights, but they're certainly in a position where they will have a similar problem. So I'm coming to the end here. Broadly speaking, we're running out of time. Broadly speaking, this is our outlook for 2020. Basically, we will continue to be cash generative for 2020. Our activity levels will continue to normal in terms of credit hire and has already done so. We're continuing to recruit within the legal services to get our cash collections up. And so we expect earnings to recover strongly in the second half. We've got £7 million in the bank from the fundraise. We've got the 2.1 million in litigation funding to pay for VW, and we have the CBILS scheme should we wish it. It is interesting that we're seeing a lot of our competitors seeking exit from the market. That's also in terms of the legal side of things. We're seeing a lot of high street solicitors who were reliant on PI cases, which, as you're probably aware, are going to disappear with the introduction of the Civil Liability Act. We're getting approaches all the time from people saying, we're quitting the business, would you like to buy our casebook? And obviously we're looking at those on a value basis. So we believe we're extremely well positioned. We're content in our existing market share growing, and we believe there are interesting new opportunities to come. As an appendix to the presentation, which I hope you've got access to, there are the figures, the income statement, the balance sheet, and the cash flow. But I will leave it there as it stands. If there isn't a chance for me to answer your questions, then please do contact me via email. You can get my email details on the Anexo website. Thank you very much.
We have quite a few questions, and they are quite a few different subject matters. So forgive me, we might just jump around a little bit.
Sure, yeah.
We do still have your screen up, by the way. So
sorry, yeah, I'm trying to get rid of it, but I can't really.
Be careful what you open. That's all I would say.
Well, no, absolutely. Yes, I wouldn't even dream to tell you what I've got on here. Okay, what can I do for you?
Okay. First off, I'm going to read this verbatim. It says, your receivables position looks very high. At the interim stage, it was 132.4 million, which compares to revenue of 36.6 million. Why does it take 21.7 months, which is the first number divided by the second, to collect amounts owed to the group?
Okay, let me explain how this works. The simple answer to why it takes so long is simply the length of the court process. Now, when an accident goes into the system, there is a 90-day period. There's a 90-day electronic portal where both sides put their information in. So in other words, both drivers, our guy and the other guy's insurance company, put their information in. At the end of that 90 days, we are due a check. As always happens, and this happens invariably, the insurance company ignores us. We send them a letter, they ignore us. But this is the point where other people start getting worried, and that's how some of our competition has run out of cash in the past because they haven't been able to collect. From our perspective, we issue court proceedings, but that's the hold up in the exercise. Because if I were to apply for a court date now, I would get one in somewhere between 15 to 18 months' time. That is just a function of the number of courts available and the amount of space they have. Now, from our perspective, we know what we're going to get in terms of the money, because at the end of that 90-day period, we know that for the sake of argument, the claim is £10,000. We know that if we went all the way to a court date, then we would get awarded that £10,000 because there is, by and large, more often than not, an admission of liability. The job we have is to keep chasing the insurance company to make sure that they settle before they go to court, because there is no point in them going to court because they're going to be found guilty. Now, what tends to happen is the insurance company will leave it to the last moment because insurance companies want to hang on to their cash. So that's really why it takes so long. And obviously, we would like to bring that down. There are all sorts of ways of bringing that down, including protocols, which we have negotiated with at least one insurance company. But that's what it is. It is not a fault of Anexo. It is a fault of the court system. But I would stress once again that we know what the figure is, and it is within our remit to settle if the insurance company approaches us for less than that, should we wish to. Otherwise, we will go all the way to court.
Thank you. Same questionnaire, kind of following on. Note 4 of the accounts shows the provision for impairments of receivables was 52.7% of the amount billed. Is this high? Why is this so high?
Well, actually, sorry, if I understand the question correctly, it's a question of what we book to start with and what we leave as a potential non-starter. So when we book a claim, we book 40. So let's say, for the sake of argument, the claim is £10,000. When we issue proceedings against the insurance company and the whole process starts, we book 47% of that claim. In other words, £4,700. Now, that's not just a figure we plucked out of nowhere. That's born out of 20 years worth of experience. We believe that is a prudent amount to book. When we settle the case, and our average settlement percentage, it's a commercially sensitive figure, but let's say it might be 10% more than that. Then we've got another £1,000 odd to play with. When we settle, that's when we book that £1,000. Okay, but up until then, the rest of it is not booked. If anything, that 47%, if any case becomes over 4 years old, then that 47% is written off. And then when the case settles, eventually, the whole lot is written back in. I hope that answers the question, but we are prudent in the way, extremely prudent in the way that we book things.
Next question. How are the staff at the front end, and I think probably also the legal staff as well, so in front end sales and claims assessors, how are they remunerated? Is it salary or KPI-based bonuses and sales commissions?
Yeah, it's a salary-based thing. I mean, our sales reps get paid. They get a bonus if they get more referrals, but depending on what the garages do, we try and maintain good relationships with our garages. In terms of the legal staff, we pay a basic salary, we get a completion bonus, and they get overtime. So actually, it's an extremely attractive package. We've had very good success in recruiting, certainly from defendant law firms and elsewhere within the legal profession.
You focused a lot on settlement, and you've invested in that area. Do you think you're now at the capacity or the resource that you need?
Well, I think we're still looking for good legal people, and I think there is still room for expansion there. Ultimately, as I say, we've got a backlog of about 19,000 cases. If we continue to put 6,000 vehicles on the road every year, as looks likely, then there'll be a continuing need to expand. I think we're going to see how Leeds goes. I think you may see us over the next few years opening offices elsewhere, and basically anywhere where there's a big insurance presence would be something we'd look to open. So, you know, Cardiff and Birmingham have been talked about, not this year, not next year, but at some stage in the future. Certainly there's more scope for growth.
We're running out of time, and I've got one person who's asked a few questions. If you can give me quite a concise answer, and he's asking about valuations. It says your proposition sounds great. Why are you trading at a low valuation? I guess you can't maybe directly answer that, but are there other peer group companies or any parallels you can draw upon about valuation or what the market, how the market works?
I'm going to take my glasses off because I'm reflecting and I can't see. I don't think we have any peers, to be perfectly honest. People try and put us in with the legal services groups, and there is an element of that, obviously, but we're not purely that. Why are we so cheap? I think there's been a liquidity issue. People have always bring up liquidity, and we've done our best to increase liquidity. But it still is something which I think hinders us. Otherwise, simple answer is I don't know. When we were £1.90, we were a lot happier than we were now, and I think I have to say, you know, it's not my job to give recommendations, but you know, I'm surprised to see the shares down here.
Nick, thank you very much indeed. Thank you for presenting and joining us this evening.